One of our core values is transparency, and that means that whatever we're learning, we want to be pushing out. We want to push out to our donors, we want to push out to our grantees, we want to push out to the larger funding community.
Philanthropy isn't that different from the rest of life. I think that we try to approach our grantee relationships the same way we approach our family and other kinds of relationships in our life. So honesty is a great goal to strive for. I'm not sure that we're always as forthright as we can be or should be, but we really try.
I think when a foundation is transparent about their goals as well, about their objectives, then the relationship can start out on a very clear footing, because you realize that you don't have to play games. This is who we are and this is who they are, and if the two come together well, then I think it's a mutual relationship and there can be open communication back and forth.
A lot of our grantee partners tell me that they know more about the way a foundation operates with skis than they do with any of their other funders. Just because we have those conversations, or I'll tell them what it's like to be pitched by other foundations, or I'll go to bat for them and try to help them acquire further funding. We try to peel back the layers, because otherwise how can anyone learn together or move forward, right?
I think Peacock Foundation's long history of community involvement is an asset that we bring to the table when we meet with our grantees. They've often told us how much they appreciate our openness and our willingness to share some of our successes and failures with them. It helps them improve their way of doing business.
We've had lessons where we've done grants and we've had this expectation, and we realized, like, okay, well, that's really unreasonable for us. And also just the process itself of doing the granting, of doing the application process. So it's really become a mutual relation building strategy for us. And so we have really adapted and changed. And not only are we changing, but we're also looking at our grantees and talking to them about these changes as well, and what would make it easier, and really being a two-way street. Because sometimes I feel it's always a one-way street.
When I say a foundation needs to be transparent, I think they need to be transparent with the nonprofits that they're working with. If a nonprofit applies to a foundation and they receive a rejection letter or decline letter, many nonprofits don't feel like they can ask why. I think it is, at the end of the day, the role of the nonprofit to ask the foundation why, but I also think it is the role of the foundation to give the nonprofit that answer. I think it's only fair that an organization put a certain amount of effort into an application. They should be able to fully understand why they were declined that funding.
Well, I'd say that some of the important lessons I've learned are giving people time if we're withdrawing from a grant, to give them time to be able to find their feet and find alternative sources of funding. In a couple of cases, I didn't understand that early on, and I thought, we've been giving these people $100,000 a year for this number of years. I think that this year we don't need to do that. We should look at this organization over here. And made phone calls and explained it, and found there was kind of pushback, and in my superiority thought, well, really, we've been generous to you all this time. I didn't understand the dynamic. I didn't understand that they have worked a year or 2 years out, that they had created a relationship with us. They assumed that this was going to continue.
One of the kind of tightrope lines that we walk as an organization is making sure that our relationships always stay transparent. And so part of those conversations with our grant partners are that our funding is not always going to be around, and that just because we are partners this year does not mean we will be partners 3 years from now. It is incredibly hard. That conversation is always hard. And once an organization or an executive director develops a sort of emotional attachment to your organization, to Allegheny Franciscan Ministries, you have to, as the funder, make sure that they understand that while we may love you and we may love the work that you do, and we're always going to be there for moral support, we may not always be there for financial support. And you have to have those transparent conversations. They're not easy, they're very difficult, And many times there are hurt feelings at the end of a grant when we say we are not continuing this funding.
Respect is also in your follow through and how accountable you are to your grantee partner. We're one of the only international organizations, even when we reject a potential grantee, that we will share our evaluation criteria with them transparently. Because we believe that every opportunity to work with a Global Southern grantee is a way to build capacity.
The fact that Needmore builds in the time to have conversations with potential grantees that have actually been rejected is incredibly unusual, but it also results in a different impact because there's a dialogue happening between people who have one view of the world and are understanding what's changing, and then people that are doing work on the ground. And I can think of examples in a bunch of different cities where people actually built stronger organizations because they had that conversation.
Only by committing to transparency will we actually get better.
The point I want to share is be humble, be transparent, be respectful, and be trustful.